What's up? What's up? Back with another one. Welcome. And if you're new, welcome. Subscribe, like, share, comment, all that stuff. Okay. This series is for the collective, so we have our information straight and we can move forward. Okay. I'm gonna create scientific PDFs, okay, and papers for us to basically be able to build, right, and then move forward, so we're not stuck in these same talking points and these same old materialistic sciences that they're trying to trap us in. Meanwhile, the answers have been here the whole time. Okay, so don't take my word for it. That's what these presentations are for. Okay, so today we're going to talk about cosmology. All right, this is a frequency-based universe. Okay, it's an electric universe, but electric in the sense of Walter Russell. Okay, not electric universe in this new sense of this electric universe, or all these things that they're talking about, goofy stuff, just trying to use relativity and quantum in their stuff so it seems valid, so they'll talk about it. Okay, but they got good points too. Okay, like the Safire Project is doing cool stuff, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, but today, all right, we're going to be presenting the real cosmology. All right. So, first things first, all right, NASA engineer, physicist, okay, you can watch this video, I'm going to link it in the description, okay, but basically, he talks about the 5 equations that most of physics and engineering and scientists use, okay, the 5 fundamental that 99% of physicists use, okay. So these 5 equations explain 99% of physics, okay, that we use, all right? The first one is Newton's law of motion. The second one is Newton's law of gravity, okay? The third, fourth, okay, are 2 of Maxwell's equations, okay? Ampere's law and Coulomb's law, okay? And the fifth is, if you combine them, it creates the wave equation that they use today. Okay, so we're going to say Newton's laws and Maxwell's equations. Okay, between those two, that explains 99% of physics. All right, that's very important because both of those men and their works are about the ether. Okay, and if y'all seen my other series, if you haven't, the link is going to be at the top right. Okay, it's going to be all the series, all the videos. All right, and what we've done to this point is break down special relativity, we've broken down Einstein, we've broken down chemistry, quantum physics, and we've explained it using the scientific method, how they're misinterpreting certain equations, all right? And they haven't proven certain things like light being a wave or a particle, or gravity being a bend in space-time, or time being an actual thing, and how they basically misinterpreted engineering equations, because everything is math-based now, okay? All right. So, there's other mathematical formulas and different things that we could use, right? So, for example, the Planck scale, right? Lorentz transformations, there's other things, okay? But basically, to explain 99% of physics, all we need is this, okay? So, moving forward in our models, as long as we have these things, we can explain 99% of physics, right? Cool. And none of it has to do with relativity at all, okay? That's just an interpretation of these things. Make sense? So this, I actually made this, all right? I made this. It's a picture of Charles Steinmetz, and it's a quote from his paper, 1917, okay? The paper is Elementary Lectures on Electrical Discharges, Waves, Impulses, and Transients. Okay, by Charles Steinmetz. Okay, and what he says, right, I believe it's page 16, I don't remember exactly, but it is obvious then that transients aren't specifically electromagnetic phenomena, but occur with all forms of energy under all conditions where energy storage takes place. Okay, so simply, what is a transient, right? What is he even saying? A transient is a sudden burst or spike to a system, playing a crucial role in a system's behavior. Okay, so if you haven't seen my other videos, I'm going to briefly explain that What we're talking about here is field interactions. All right, so particles are just vibrations in fields. Okay, and the materialistic part of science is focusing on the particle. Okay, when it's fields, we're gonna explain what the fields are. Okay, but basically, sudden bursts or spikes to a system being the field. So fluctuations, discharges, different things create everything and every type of particle and every type of condition, every type of element, and all of that. And we're going to get into how. Okay. So, this is also from the same scientific paper. Okay. And I'm going to read it real quick so we have an understanding of what the electric field is. Okay, so when we say electric universe, now we know what an electric field is. Okay, and it'll show clearly that light isn't a wave or a particle, so we can move forward. So, we'll start from here. Are crowded in together between the conductors and the magnetic field consists of eccentric circles around the conductor. An electrostatic, or more properly called dielectric field, issues from the conductors. Okay, a dielectric flux passes between the conductors, which is measured by the numbers of lines of dielectric force within a single conductor. The lines of the dielectric force are radial straight lines, as shown in the dotted figure. Okay, so these dotted lines are the dielectric field. All right, and these circle lines are the magnetic field. Okay, so what makes up the electric field is the dielectric field and the magnetic field. Okay, so for people who don't know, you disturb the ether, you get the dielectric field. Okay, the dielectric field is the loss of energy from the ether, okay, from disturbing it, and that manifests as energy or discharge. Okay, and the loss of inertia or power within that field, okay, which is capacity, all right, it inverts and it creates the torus, which is a loss of energy. Okay, it's compression and refraction, and in the middle of that is a dielectric portal. Okay, what does that all mean? Right? What are you even saying? All right. Basically, you have fields, and when these fields interact with other fields, you have conditions, and these conditions create what they want to call these superpositions and quantum entanglement and quantum leaping and quantum tunneling, and all these things are words to describe interactions within fields. Okay, very simple. Okay, so disturbing the ether releases energy or pressure in the form of the dielectric field. Okay, and the geometry of that field happens to be an hourglass shape. Okay, and the loss of inertia within the dielectric field becomes the magnetic field. Okay, and that field becomes the torus. Okay, so you have the torus, then you have the hourglass shape within that. Okay, very simple. And we're going to see why everything takes on those types of shapes because of those field pressures. Okay, so plasma having a toroidal shape is because it's electromagnetic. Okay, interactions of fields. Okay, so high Gauss, high capacity, high Gauss, low capacity, low Gauss, high capacity, low Gauss, low capacity. What is Gauss? Gauss is magnetic pressure. Okay, so the stronger the magnetic pressure, the weaker the magnetic pressure. The amount of capacity storage of energy, the low amount of capacitive storage of energy. That's what dictates these interactions. Okay? Very simple. And when we're talking about Walker-Russell, okay, we're going to go off the Walker-Russell periodic table of elements, okay, which simply shows the frequencies and the field interactions and how that creates every element. Okay, so very simple on that one. Okay, Walker-Russell's. All right, cosmic clock, table of elements. Okay, and he basically said the same thing about high pressures and low pressures and what he called radiation and gravity, which is the refraction and the compression. Okay, so compression equals power, right? Because that increases the amount of capacity something has, right? And then one atom exists, right? Which is the hydrogen atom in different pressures and energy states, right? So you add capacity, which is electrons, right? And you add compression, which is the protons, right? The neutrons and the protons, which they call the nucleus, right? And that high energy right? The higher the energy, it becomes gamma, right? And it becomes plasma, right? The higher the energy, okay? The higher the capacity of energy. Very simple. So what this diagram represents is magnetic fluctuations, or fluctuations within magnetic fields. And fluctuations within magnetic fields and compression equals plasma, equals the whole universe, equals a lot of things, including the sun. Okay, so magnetic compression is what creates the sun. We're going to go into that in a different video. I'm going to have a whole video of the sun, how it works, okay, the lies and all that stuff, okay, and the science, because everything we're doing is off the scientific method, okay? So magnetic fluctuations are a real thing. Anyone can look it up. I'm not making this stuff up, okay? So they could also call it spin fluctuations, okay? So it's variations of a magnetic field movement, okay? Magnetic phase transition, used to explain superconductivity, okay? Related concepts: magnetic field fluctuations, spin noise, 0-point spin fluctuations, transverse or longitudinal fluctuations, and spin waves or magnons, okay? So remember, if you haven't seen my other videos before, okay, I've made points on how scientists like to, or in general, modern day humans, we've come up with terms, a million terms for the same thing. Okay, for example, water, right? You have mist, you have ice, you have vapor, you have steam, you have all these different words for the same thing in a different phase, right? So same thing here, where we got many terms explaining the same thing. Okay, but what is that thing? Okay, it's basically fluctuation within a field. Okay, fluctuation meaning movement or vibration. Okay, million terms for the same things, right? So in space, they already know about this. Anyone can look these things up, right? Vacuum magnetic permeability. Okay, that calculates the strength of magnetic field induced by EMF currents. Okay, so the magnetic field in space, right? Just like vacuum permittivity, which is dielectric potential in space. So in space, there's dielectric potential and magnetic field pressures because we're within an electric field, right? Why does that matter? Okay, that goes against the gravity-based cosmology, which ultimately destroys a lot of their talking points and the things they're trying to make real that aren't real. Okay, pull the wool over people's heads because they want to materialize science. Why do you want to do that? They took spirit out of science. They took the identity of what science is, and then they basically, these invisible things, these invisible forces and stuff that dictate everything, right? These magnetic fluctuations and all this capacity, all these things, right? These EMF waves. You can't see these things, a lot of these things, okay? And they're real. They're invisible and they're real. Just like the spiritual realm. It's invisible and real, and there's science to these things, okay? Vortex. The vortex science is the portal science, okay? And they try and make that shit look goofy, right? And, you know, it's not fair for, you know, the people who have died, for all the damage that's been done, and for the people who want to know, right? Because, you know, those 20 scientists that have died recently and stuff, you know, that's not new. Okay, how many people's ancestors were killed and called pagans and warlords and, you know, witch doctors and, you know, all types of things when, you know, they were like scientists and stuff. You know, it's not fair. So this, I don't know if this is going to come out on camera or not, but this is a picture of inside a nuclear reactor where they can see the plasma. And this is for the first time they took a picture inside the reactors. They see plasma's toroidal nature. Okay. That clearly shows the field that's inducing these things, right? And, you know, this whole gravity thing, I have a video explaining gravity, how it's dielectric acceleration, and, you know, it's not, none of these things are my opinion, okay? So everything I'm doing is off the scientific method. I'm providing experiments, I'm providing citations, right? I also provided this Stanford study which shows that people will hold their biases even presented with new information. Okay, so I'm very much understanding that not everyone's going to receive this message the way it's supposed to be received, but some people are, and that's the point. For this is for people who want to know. So, right, first picture inside the reactor, right, shows the toroidal nature of plasma, right. Moving on, speaking of those scientists that got killed, right, this is a man named Wilhem Reich, and that's his cloudbuster machine. Okay, this is the cloudbuster. Okay, anyone can make a cloudbuster. Okay, they try to call this man crazy. They try to do all types of things to this man. Okay, they locked him up because he cured cancer with his orgone machines, right? And they try to say orgone isn't real, but people in laboratories already made orgone in 2017. They already experimentally proved these things, right? And orgone is basically kundalini energy, it's sexual energy, right? But that's like the scientific version of it, right? So in his works, the sun's field is what excites the Earth's field, and that's what makes the Earth glow blue. Okay, and the excitation of those fields creates energy, right? And it induces light too. And that's very important because Kundalini energy is scientific, and we have the science, and it's already proven experimentally in laboratories, and they're not going to talk about these things. Okay, so Wilhem Reich, he has something called his cosmic superimposition of formative fields. Okay, so basically two sexual energy fields, one is cosmic and one is biological. When these two fields interact, they could stimulate their excitation to the points of illumination, meaning create light. It's non-electromagnetic and permeates the universe. How is it non-electromagnetic? Science tries to say everything is an electromagnetic field. That's not true. There's something called scalar waves, okay, which is point source energy, and they're not waves, okay? They're point-to-point energy, no time, okay? Beyond the speed of light is instant, okay? And we know that because scalar waves don't have a wavelength, okay? They're measured in voltage, okay? And voltage is dielectricity. So the dielectricity, that's point source energy, point to point, no time, okay? Very important. So when they're talking about non-electromagnetic, okay? He argued that movement of orgone energy is what shapes all natural phenomena. Formative fields are frozen movement, okay? Frozen movement means it's vibrating so fast it appears to not move. Okay, that's how high energy it is. Once maximum perturbation is reached and the energy level increases, an object appears to be motionless. Okay, energy. Okay, boom. He also has something called gravitational superimposition. Okay, which gravity is a result of convergent movement of two orgone energy fields. Okay, very important when we talk about field interactions, which is what creates gravity, right? Because the dielectric portal is basically where the two objects are meeting, right? In a point in counter space, right? This dielectric portal, okay, and that's from an excitation of their fields, which has a direct effect on the objects. Okay, so in 1956, he was arrested, right? And the feds seized and destroyed all his stuff, okay? And the government sponsors took all his books and basically burnt it, right? Put him in jail, all these things, okay? We're going to see a common narrative when it comes to truth-telling and how they treat these type of scientists, all right? Moving on to someone who validated Mr. Wilhem Reich's works, okay? Eric Dollard, okay? This experiment he calls the cosmic induction generator, okay? And he basically created fractal galaxies inside his lab using vacuum tubes and frequencies, okay? So this is his cosmic induction generator, right? Eric Dollard, okay? He creates a fractal galaxy, right? Using vacuum tubes and frequencies and noble gases, okay? He replicates Wilhem Reich's cosmic superimposition, okay? And he's also stated, right, that this is also evidence for his energy desynthesis, which is where energy disappears into different space dimensions, also known as a quantum leap. So basically, when an electron leaps into another dimension and then it comes back with more energy, that's what he calls his energy desynthesis. Okay. Very simple. It's just gaining energy. Okay, and that point in counter space is that same point within that electric field where you see the two dots. Okay, very simple. Also, his lab and his inventions are burned down and destroyed too. Okay, and they try and discredit him because he doesn't talk good about Einstein and relativity. All right, even though he can obviously invent and do his own experiments and prove his points, that's why they don't like him. Okay, and he's recreated a lot of Tesla's inventions. Okay, so he's very big on the dielectric inventions. For people who don't know, Tesla, his inventions were dielectric based. That's why he was talking about wireless power from here to here, beyond the speed of light, and all these things. And they were calling them crazy, even though scalar waves exist now. Even though now they're doing wireless power transmissions with zero speed and all that stuff. Somehow he's still crazy, right? But anyway, moving on. I'm sure this picture doesn't look good on camera, but this is the star in a jar experiment, right? Also known as sonoluminescence. Okay, for the people who are not familiar with it, they basically had water and they added gases to it, and then they used a sound wave, and that basically created light. So that sound wave induced light within the water medium. Okay, and for a lot of people that think space is water and stuff, because there's a lot of water in space, they use these water mediums because of that. But the ether is where that fluid dynamics comes from. So water follows those same field geometries. So that's why the ether has a liquid like or gas like presence. And that's why people think space is water. Okay. It makes sense observationally, like what you're looking at, but it's not what's going on exactly or entirely. Okay. These are pictures from interferometer. Okay, and this was done by John Bedini. Okay, and it's his Rife experiments. Okay, for people who don't know Royal Rife, he was also arrested for curing cancer using frequencies, which Harvard scientists, I think in 2017, recreated. Okay, and they call it now the 11th harmonic. They say the 11th harmonic cures cancer. Okay, they proved Rife's works. So did John Bedini. Okay, he used an interferometer. Okay, and he's able to create fractal symmetries. Okay, and basically this is what Eric Dollar did, but this is in the magnetic sense. Okay, so Eric Dollar's inventions are dielectric based. A lot of them. This was magnetic based. Okay, you know when it comes to MRIs and stuff like that, it's a magnetic based thing. Okay, so you know, a popular term for what I'm about to talk about is, you know, in the beginning there was a word and the word was God and stuff like that, right? But the ancients basically knew that the gods sung the universe into existence. Okay, and their scientific, their physics on how they explain that, they would basically, they would tie a rope, right? They would make it straight, right, like a string. And when they pluck that string, that would be the waves, right? That would be their physics. Okay. So it's called the celestial monochord. Okay. That's what they call it now. Okay. That's the watered down version name. Okay. Which is basically a string stretched over a sound box. Okay. Used to measure the frequency. Okay. This universe is frequency based. Okay. And the frequency comes from the excitation of the ether. Okay. So someone disturbed that ether, okay, and the ancestors, the way they explained that was through a song. Okay, the disturbance of the air molecules which creates the sound, right? That was their way of explaining that. But the universe has many frequencies and sounds, and scientists don't like to talk about it that much, but there's actually sound in space. Okay, because space isn't like a perfect vacuum. So I'm gonna show the evidence on how, because this is not my opinion. Okay, so the universe being a song, that science is very old. Okay, so the 88 octaves, right? You got the 88 constellations that are recognized now. That's not really a scientific point here. Okay, it's just something I mentioned. Okay, but you have the 88 keys on the piano, right? Which is very significant on why piano was created and the Fibonacci sequence within the piano and all that stuff, the structure, okay, is based on the universe. Okay, you got the 7 major scale degrees in music. You got the 7 diatonic modes in music. You got 7 colors, 7 chakras, the 7 original planets. 777. Okay, and actually the musical notes came from studying the planets, right? So planet 1, right, equals 1, right? Note C, right? Planet 2 is 9/8, which is note D, right? And so on and so on. So they actually got the musical notes from studying the planets, right? And then we talk about Kepler and stuff like that, right? So that was always a big part of science. But nowadays, they, instead of the string, they use a spring. Okay, so they call that Hooke's law. Okay, modern physicists use this instead of strings. Now they use springs. Okay, so physics, that's why they, when a lot of them, when they're using their examples, that's their example. I would go back to strings, but that's just me. Okay, so being that the universe is a song, okay, what we're postulating here, okay, within this framework is that the universe is a polyphony, okay, which is basically 2 or more independent tunes played in sequence, okay. So basically field interaction. So these frequencies in sequence are what generated everything to this point, right? That's what we're going with, right? So you even find sound waves in the Big Bang. Okay, so the CMB, right? There's fluctuations of density within the CMB, right? They call them acoustic waves, okay? And it's dense plasma. Okay, so there's fluctuations within this dense plasma in the CMB, and scientists, we already showed that redshift is plasma, right? Plasma redshift. We already showed that we experimentally have plasma redshift recreated in a laboratory, and we know redshift blueshift is just observation based, okay? And the Doppler effect, you need a medium anyway, right? So the Doppler effect would automatically need a medium, meaning it would prove the ether if they're going to use the Doppler effect point, right? Which is basically our points anyway, right? And light, you can't measure the distance just by looking at it, okay? So these fluctuations are happening in real time, and they're trying to say that they look in the CMB and that's the past billions of years ago. No, it's not. That's happening in real time. We're seeing acoustic waves in real time in space. Okay, pay attention, y'all, because we have the data right here. With the data right there. Okay, so this is a picture of a of a black hole. Okay, and in 2003, they detected sound waves coming from that black hole. Okay, and it's vibrating at the note B flat. It was a very low vibration. Okay, and it's because there's dense plasma there, and the plasma is the medium in which the sound could travel. Sound waves travel through plasma. Okay, y'all, that's very important. Okay, because there's thick plasma around the Earth. Okay, and there's something called coarse waves, right? So the Los Angeles plasma detector at UCLA, right, detects coarse waves, which are high energy plasma excitations of radiation fields, okay, and the Earth's field. Okay, and they create phenomena like the Van Allen belts, the aura field. They play a role in the ionosphere, okay, and they're found in outer space as well. So when you look up a coarse wave, they're going to say it's an electromagnetic wave, which they can then translate into sound. Right? Cool. But there's other types of sound waves too. So this isn't a sound wave, right? But these plasma filaments are still coming from the sun to the earth, right? So they could still be sound. How? Let me explain. There's something called stellar sound waves, or Star-quakes, right? So there's thick plasma regions in space, okay? And these plasma regions are where sound waves could occur, right? So astroseismology, vibrations of stars can tell you the chemistry of stars. Thousands of sound waves bounce in and out of stars, including our sun, like a giant symphony, okay, y'all? So these sounds, these vibrations, even you could think of a radio wave as a sound wave, okay? That's not talked about much, but A radio wave is it's a sound message being transmitted through an electromagnetic wave. Think about tuning into the radio. You're getting songs and music. That's a electromagnetic wave that you're tuning into, and then sound comes from it. That's a sound wave. Anyway, I know the semantics that they're gonna laugh at it, ha ha ha. So, cymatics, right? We're gonna move on to the sound in space. Okay, we're gonna take a little more direction. Right, we're gonna dig a little deeper into it. The direction we're gonna go is knots. Okay, and cymatics shapes matter, right? And it actually turns it into knots. Okay, these knots are like Lord Kelvin's, atom knot, right? Vortex atom knot. Magnetic compression compresses plasma into knots. Okay, just like cymatics shapes matter into like these knots. Right? These knots of energy, which are basically light, which is matter's just frozen light, right? At a lower density, not a higher frequency, right? We're gonna see how that actually shapes space, right? So the flower of life is a representation of this knot physics. Okay, very important, right? So there's a bunch of bubbles in space. They call it bubbles. Okay, that's these knots. And we're going to talk about it. Okay, so turbulent magnetic bubbles permeate space. Okay, known as a possible cosmic superbrain with self-organizing intelligence. Okay, so these magnetic bubbles self-organize into intelligent it's basically high energy light, but scientists almost say it's like organic life. It's like matter, the way it functions, just like the UAP reports where they say they look like UFOs and they act conscious and they don't let scientists turn them into weapons and stuff like that. These plasma beings are intelligent because the ether is intelligent, and these fields we exist in have information in them because they're intelligent. So information doesn't just come from the DNA, it actually comes from these fields too. And we could tap into these fields, that's how we tap into information. Does that make sense? Okay? And we exist within these fields. That's how spooky action at a distance works. Okay? That's how quantum entanglement works, right? That word quantum entanglement, I don't like the word quantum because we already debunked quantum. But basically, they're trying to say that you and this particle are connected at the edge of the universe, and it's not through a invisible rope, it's through fields. We're all connected within these fields, and movement in these fields create disturbances, and these field interactions are what shape reality, and they also affect us on a daily basis. Okay, so when I get into the astrology parts of these things, we're going to see how these field excitations actually affect our biology and the Earth's biology and the solar system and space and everything. Okay, and I'm gonna show the scientific reports. I'm not just gonna be talking. All right, so everything I presented here, I'm gonna have links and citations, okay, in the description, so you know this isn't my opinion. Okay, guys, very important. So there's other bubbles in space, right? They got the Oort cloud, the local bubble, the heliosphere. There's many bubbles in space. These are knots of compressed light and energy. Okay, y'all? So, very simple. They call this, in a scientific term, they call this baryogenesis, okay, or cosmic knots. Okay, these are formative intertwining symmetries. Okay, so when these fields interact, right, they interact in an intelligent way, and it forms these knots. And these knots compress into geometries that seem lifelike, right? And they move like organic matter. Okay, so Lord Kelvin's vortex knot atoms, okay, stable vortices within the ether, right? Common theme we're gonna see is these people already said these things, right? And when we look at the yin-yang symbol, for example, we'll see the magnetic field, we'll see the dielectric field, we'll see the portals, and we'll see how the electric field is created through these two fields, and how the disturbance of the ether, or that oneness, is what created those two fields, and those two fields need each other to create the electric field. And we'll see that the science that they're talking about makes so much more sense than this particle wave bullshit that they can't even prove. And it messes with people's heads. And it makes it super materialistic, and it strays people away from spirit, which is the most important thing when it comes to this reality. That's just a dream. That's not even physical, but appears to be physical, right? And all the science exists to prove all these things, okay? So, this, we talked about, I mentioned earlier, the Safire Project. What is that? Okay, so a team of researchers used hydrogen gas and added electric currents, which produced a plasma ball, which then self-organized and created double layers, okay? Which double layers are basically electrochemical effects. So a double layer is two layers of plasma, one being compression, the other being refraction, okay? So very important, those compressions and refractions, because that's going to be a common thing coming up. They're just going to call it a million things, right? Attraction and repulsion and all these things. What's really happening is compression and refraction. That's the explanation. The terms, they're going to come up with a million terms for these things, and it's not going to explain, but they're going to describe many things, but they're not going to explain much. So double layers are electrochemical effects, okay, which create electric shells that store atoms and ions. So an electric shell is basically the same thing as saying a cloud in like particles. When they say particle clouds, right, which is basically that the radiation cloud, right? And it's saying you could store atoms and ions inside this cloud, right? Which the cloud is basically what they would call an atom or a particle or things like that, okay? Basically disturbances within a field, okay? So, plasma Z-pinch, right? So when we talk about space and what happens, okay, these magnetic compressions happen, okay? So once the ancestors sung everything into existence, right? And then you get the dielectric field, you get the magnetic field, you get stuff like that. Then you get these electric fields, and then fluctuations within these fields are what create, you know, the plasma, right? The compression. You compress the magnetic field, that's what creates the plasma, okay? That's where the galaxies come from, that's where these stars come from, that's where eventually the planets came from, okay? And then there were beings that evolved naturally, and then there's some beings that are created by other beings, and we'll get into that in other videos. But for now, plasma Z-pinch is electric currents within plasma creating magnetic fields compressing into knots. Okay, so plasma Z-pinch literally creates plasma knots. Okay, so knots, very important. When you see the flower of life, we talk about knotted light. We talk about atoms. We talk about knotted light. We talk about plasma in space. We talk about knotted light. Cymatics, knotted light. Okay, y'all? Evidence on evidence on evidence. This isn't me making stuff up. Okay, I didn't create knots or plasma or Z-pinch. I didn't create any of these things. Okay, so to end this video, right, we're going to use Eric Lerner. This is Eric Lerner. He also speaks against relativity. That's a common theme when it comes to a lot of these people. You're going to see that they either kill them or dismiss them, but they can't argue against the evidence. And that's my favorite part of this is, oh, what's your credentials? My credentials is facts and experiments and actually using the scientific method to explain things and not deny any science or evidence along the way. That's why I feel like right now, this along with my next video, and then when I come out with the next parts of the cosmology and everything, then we could, we're gonna have the most accurate model of space out here, just because of certain facts that I'm not gonna leave out because I'm not biased. Okay, so just because I don't believe in stuff like relativity, that don't mean I didn't take any of the mathematics that was in there. It just so happens that the mathematics that's in there, other people he took it from had their own interpretations, and I'm just rolling with their interpretations because it goes with nature, right? Because we're not just satisfied with engineering equations. If you're satisfied with the engineering equations, you're just happy that the equations work, that's cool. But equations are descriptive. They don't explain nothing, okay? So we want the explanations behind phenomena, okay? And science already explained it. And it just so happened to be the same thing the ancestors said. That's why they don't like that. Okay? But Eric Lerner, okay, he has his plasma quasar galaxy model. Alright? And basically in his model, magnetic self-compression, right, toroidal magnetic fields emerge from inner regions of the disk, and formations of jets accumulated by magnetic pressures. Okay? So what is he trying to say? He's trying to say magnetic compressions within galaxies is what forms quasars and stars. Okay? And he has experiments within labs showing his results and stuff. Okay, so he's just not out here talking. Alright. He also has a replacement for gravity within his model. Okay, it's called self-induced magnetic compressions. Okay, replacement for gravity, replaced by living dynamic magnetic fields that compress plasma. Okay, so field interactions between two objects. Right. In the next part, I'm gonna build, because his model, he studied other people's models, right? And I'm gonna present their models, right? His model, you don't need the universe to be big, right? Which is going to go along with the universe existing within the Milky Way galaxy, which is what I'm gonna present in the next video. For now, this was a presentation to show how the universe forms, okay? Without using the goofy materialistic science, using evidence and experiments, okay? Building forward from this, I'm gonna present other facts, right? And from there, we'll be able to build a model of the universe that makes sense, okay? We have the mathematics, right? We have 99% of the physics, so we have the mathematics, right? We have the experiments, we have everything, okay? So I'm really honored. I feel honored to do this and present this type of information for the collective. And moving forward, we're not gonna have to use older talking points, right? We'll be able to move forward from these points, right? So anyone who watches my series, you don't even have to watch the whole series. Go into the description, look at all the citations and the links. Don't believe a word I'm saying. Look at everything presented. After this video too, everything that's there, right? Take everything, and we're gonna see that field interactions are what shape everything, down from quantum to chemistry, all the way up. We're gonna get into biology soon, but right now we're in cosmology. Okay, so this is facts on top of facts on top of facts, right? Anyway, I don't want to hold y'all up too long. I feel really blessed. It's May, y'all. April shower bring May flowers. Happy New Year, if I ever said it to anybody. I'm in one of the best positions I've ever been in my life, and I owe everything to the spirits and the people around me that are helping me. My girl, the spirits. Life is great. I hope y'all feel the same. Many blessings to you and your family if you're feeling different. Everything we go through is to make us stronger and for us to learn, because Earth's a school. If you don't feel qualified to talk about something, it's because someone made you feel that way. We all are allowed to have an opinion, and everyone's opinion should be respected, and the facts should be presented. We shouldn't just be saying things to say them, and you shouldn't be hateful. You know, we're coming into this time where AI, all these things are going to take over. And I presented my information in a certain way, so it's not too, like, edited. You know, I don't edit my videos as far as these full videos anyone can watch on YouTube. If I make a mistake, I make a mistake with my words. I don't edit it out. You know, I really don't want to be part of that whole digital society. You know, we're working to form communities that are self-sustaining and help the earth. And we're not against technology. We're against technology that doesn't serve the purpose of helping, or at least doesn't do damage. right? So, am I against cars or airplanes or ships? No. I'm against the fact that the oil and the gas and all that stuff and the emissions, all these things that do damage. I'm against all the ships that use the engines that mess with the whales, right? We could use sail ships, right? But we need our things right on time. We need our thing. We need overnight shipping. We need all. People are so needy. Are we really gonna just add to the damage just for a little comfort? You know, we're coming into these times where people really need to make tough decisions for themselves, for the future. A lot of people online talking crap, and some people are here ready to build, move forward, and not just talk about it. So for the people who are trying to build, we're forming communities here to push things forward, okay? Because I'm not going to use the words good or evil. Everything's a tool that could be used, okay? We're going to use things wisely, and we're not going to cause damage along the way. We're going to move in high vibrations, and we're going to know that karma and dharma exist within these choices. And moving forward, the more we make high vibrational choices, is the better dharma we'll receive. And that's self-monetary gain stuff, right? But that's also soul mission. So, soul mission. What's your soul mission? What are you here to do? Are you just too preoccupied with your time working, doing things, and then adding and contributing onto the damage without putting in your own? How could you help? What are you here to do? How do you help the earth? What are you here? Have you helped the earth? What have you done for the earth? How could you help the earth? Start asking these questions. Form your businesses around helping, right? Don't just put something up to put it out. Make sure it contributes to the overall of what is supposed to be accomplished within these times, which is why the information's out. All right. I went on a little rant there, talking to the collective. All these videos are for the collective, okay? For the scientific people that's watching, these are all facts, no matter what, okay? And you can attack people's credentials all day, but we're sitting here using the scientific method to prove our points. So, come with whatever you're coming with. I'm prepared and ready for anyone who's coming with whatever information they got. I'm good with what I got here. I don't really need people to believe it either. I'm just trying to push things forward and push conversations forward. There's a lot of stagnancy, a lot of arguments over dumb things that aren't even real, and a lot of mind poison when it comes to the way people view certain things, which is not cool, and I don't like it. So, I'm doing something about it, and this is just the beginning. So, for those who are new, if y'all are ready for this type of experience, y'all ready for this ride, come along. Like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever. We're here. I got businesses. I'm going to start putting them out there more publicly. I'm not trying to cash in on the collective, man. It's just, I'm here and we're doing good things. And be a part of that. That was my cue. Peace.